does anyone out there like being comfortable? I, for instance, like being comfortable, and I was thinking about times when I really like being comfortable, just like in the natural sense. I like my bed to be like a certain way when I go to sleep, and I get like so irritated if it's not a certain way. And maybe you're just like, I don't know, I could sleep anywhere. I can sleep anywhere, but man, when I go to bed, it's like I like our room really cold, because I like to have a huge, thick blanket on. So I like the room really cold. And one thing that I do before I go to bed is I go in there and I like make sure the comforter is like evenly on our bed, and it has to be like pulley stretched. My sheets can't have like wrinkles in them. I have to tighten. I know, I'm a little OCD. And I literally do this every night, and I don't even think about it, but I just go and tighten my sheets. I like fluff the blanket up. I pull it up so it's just so like on the edge of the bed, and like I fold the thing under my pillow. And then like everything has to be just so, because I like to be comfortable. Does anyone out there like to be comfortable? Thank you. Does anyone have like their at-home clothes? Or when you go home, like I literally wear the same thing when I get home. I just rotate the sweatpants and sweatshirt. And like I have to wash my sweatpants all the time now that I have a baby and she spits up everywhere. Like I literally like just come home and I take everything off and put sweats on and a sweatshirt. Now that it's getting warm, it might be a t-shirt. But it's so funny, like I think of like my comfy clothes. I don't like leggings, I don't like jeans, I don't like being restricted in my arms. Like it's just, I don't know. As human beings, we just like being comfortable. Well, I think back to the children of Israel. Like, why is it that they would want to go back to be slaves? Well, it says we would like to go back when we sat by the pots of meat and we ate bread to the full. Even though they were slaves, it's like there was something comforting about knowing that they could anticipate food. Like they knew food was going to be here. And although in the story, God says, you know, I'm going to provide you food, they didn't really know when the food was going to be provided. They didn't know how the food was going to be provided. So because they were uncomfortable, because they were afraid of the unknown, if you will, they wanted to go back to being slaves. So again, they would rather be in slavery because they have this comfort of knowing when their food is going to be, rather than being free and walking on like this faith type journey. So how many of you know that sometimes faith can make you uncomfortable? Has anyone ever had to go through a situation where God's like, I'm going to take you on a faith journey, and it's like all of a sudden you're really uncomfortable? Thanks, 2 people. Well, I know, I like participation. People like do the, they think yes in their head. I like to see it. Like, I just know that sometimes God takes me on these faith journeys, and it's like not very comforting, especially if you can know how OCD I am about having my bed like predictable. Like I like to know how it's going to be. Imagine if God's taking me on like an actual like faith journey through my life. It can be a little scary sometimes, because a lot of times we're afraid of the unknown. So I want to do something tonight, and I already volunteered Ariel. And the reason that I want to have Ariel is, okay, so Ariel, can you come up here for a second? And I need one other volunteer. Please don't raise your hand so quickly. Oh, this will be a funny one. Let's do Josh. Okay. I love there was 2 hesitant ones, and then Josh was just like me. Okay, so come up here. So Ariel is at the district all the time. He plays on the stage every Sunday night. He's been doing it for like so many years. So I would say, like, would you say that you're pretty comfortable with the stage?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I want to see how comfortable you are with the stage blindfolded. And he's going to be your guide today. Okay, so let's walk you over here. He gets to borrow his wife's pretty scarf. Okay, so we're going to start over here. Can you blindfold him, or one of you can do it? You cannot cheat. So even if you can like see through it, close your eyes. It's a blanket. So, here, I'll just do it. You're slow. All right, so here, go like, well, you don't know where you're going. So you'll start right, so he knows that there's some expensive equipment on this stage. Okay, so, okay, you, listen though. You gotta be like super cautious, okay? Can you do this?
Yes.
Okay, so you have to guide him, but you have to explain to him where he's going. You you can like hold the arm like this. But you have to say like step over the cable and watch out for this and all this stuff. So you're going to bring him from that side of the stage to this side of the stage. Okay. You might want to hold his arm because, you know, yeah.
You're going forward, you're fine. You're going to whack Ashley in the face, so let's move a little bit to the right. All right.
Don't fall off.
Forward.
Just kidding.
I was like, wait, I thought you were...
Oh, you do. You can't pull him. You just have to tell him. See? Okay, he stepped on a thing. So step back, step. Keep going. Now you can come forward. Forward, 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 forward.
Turn left a little bit. Turn left about 5 degrees, Ariel. All right, forward. Forward. Stop.
See, he's already stepped on like a lot of
Slightly
equipment.
to your- no, a little bit more left. What are you...
You gotta help him.
Using
He's
him.
blind. He doesn't even know where he's walking.
Forward. Step forward. Stop. Turn a little bit to your right. No. I'm sorry, Ted.
He said to your right. Okay, we get the point. All right.
Your other...
Give it up for Ariel. Good job. Okay. Okay, Josh, you can sit down. Ariel, come over here. Give it up for Josh. All right, how was that experience for you?
Uncomfortable.
You don't have to say uncomfortable. Like, be honest. Like, what was it like?
Well, it was,
Were you worried about knocking your base over?
yes, and and the iPad and everything that was there. But the thing is, like, I was not trusting Josh.
Okay, so now you don't have a blindfold on. Now, walk from one side of the stage to the other. Woo! Give it up for Ariel. So I was thinking about something. How many of you know, like, when you're in a comfortable situation, you actually know what is ahead of you? Like, you can see what's clearly in front of you. You're not going to be worried about knocking over a giant iPad. You're not going to be worried about knocking over your bass or tripping over a cord or falling off the stage because you can actually see what is in front of you. But the moment, like, you become blindfolded, there's something in you that's, like, scary. Has anyone ever, like, been walking in the dark and you're just like, we have like the temple side of the church. It's where we have service every Sunday morning. And like, I'm in there all the time. Like, I know it like to a T. But like one time I had to go get something from my mom and it was like pitch black in there. And I'm walking and I'm following the wall, but all of a sudden I'm like, I feel like I'm walking sideways. And I was like, uh-oh, the wall does go sideways. So I was like, how am I going to make it to the stairs? I literally, like, if someone would have found me in there, I just got on the floor. And I was like, crawling on the floor. And then, like, I know there's, like, all the music equipment on the stage. So I was like, I'm like closing my eyes. I don't even know why. Like, and there was just one red light. And I was just like, just follow the red light. But it was funny because, like, I'm so used to that situation. But when I can't see what's ahead of me, it's like super uncomfortable. And I wanted to use that because sometimes faith, when we're walking in this faith journey, because how many of you know being a Christian and walking in the plan that God has for you, it is a faith journey. Sometimes when we're on that journey of faith, we get filled with fear. Sometimes when we're on that journey, we're afraid because we don't know what's coming next. And it's a crazy, crazy feeling to be filled with fear. It's a crazy feeling to be afraid of the unknown. And sometimes what happens is it can really be crippling. Faith can be crippling. It can kind of really hold us back from doing everything that God has called us to do. And in Matthew 14:28-30, it says, and Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. Now, Mario used this scripture the last time we had service before Mother's Day, I believe it was. So he talked about it, and he talked about this scripture from the aspect of faith. But I want to point something out to you tonight. Peter obviously had to have trusted God and Jesus, whoever, Jesus walking on 3 in 1, you know what I'm saying? He obviously, when Jesus was walking on water, he obviously trusted him to some extent. He obviously had faith to some extent because he said, well, Jesus, if it's you, command me to walk on water. Because he knew that Jesus could command him to walk on water and it would work. So he had to have had faith, some aspect of faith. So he says, Jesus, if it's you, command me to walk on the water. So he starts walking on the water, but it says, and the wind was boisterous. He was afraid. And because he was afraid, he began to sink. So he cried out, Lord, save me. Why did he begin to sink? Because he was afraid. So even though he had faith, even though he knew that with Jesus all things are possible, even though he knew with Jesus that he was capable of walking on water, he let fear inside of him. Even though he knew and had faith, he was filled with that fear and he was afraid. So sometimes we have faith to do the things that the Lord is calling us to do. Okay, God, I have faith that you have a plan for me. God, I have faith that you have called me. God, I have faith that you're going to restore this situation. God, I have faith that you're not going to hold my past mistakes and dangle them in front of me all the time. God, I have that faith, but sometimes even though we know and have that faith that God can do all things, there's a part of us that lets fear inside of us. And when we let that fear set in, it actually can cripple us. And I don't mean cripple as in cripple. I mean cripple as in it can hold us back from doing and fulfilling everything that God has called us to do. Because we open our heart for that faith, but when our heart's open for that faith, we let fear come in, and that fear can really hold us back. So again, it can sneak in and really keep us from moving forward. So we have to know and trust that, you know what, God, I know that you can redeem me. God, I know that you can restore me. God, I know that you can fill me with love. God, I know that you can fill me with peace. God, I know that you're the God that's going to give me strength. Lord, I know all these things, and I have faith that you're going to do it. But God, don't let fear set in my heart. God, don't let me be afraid and let that fear hold me back from really experiencing your redemption. God, don't let that fear hold me back from experience the full restoration that you have for me, or that full restoration that you have for the situation that's going on in my life. Because if we have faith to know that he can do it, but if we let fear in, we're never going to experience the fullness that God has for us. So we have to really be cautious to not let fear set in. In Romans 8:28-30, it says, and we know that all things work together for the good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose, for whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he predestined, these he also called. Whom he called, these he also justified. And whom he justified, these he also glorified. I have over this scripture, what if? Well, God, I know that you have a plan for me, but what if I'm not good enough? God, what if I'm not qualified? God, what if I'm not capable? I know that you say I am, but what if I'm not? God, what if I try it and I fail? God, what if this situation that I've been praying for, I never fully feel the restoration that you have for me? What if I look stupid? God, what if people start making fun of me? God, what if I do what you called me to do and everyone around me tells me that I can't do it even though I know that you've called me to do it? What if? What if? What if? And all of a sudden we start asking all these questions about what if happens. And what happens is fear causes us to ask these questions. Fear's the thing that creeps in and says, you're not good enough. Where faith says, I am good enough because I know that if God called me to do it, I can do it. Faith says, if God called me to do it, I am qualified. But fear says, what if I'm not? And the typical verse that I think about saying that like, oh, you know, like God's gonna complete you or God's gonna fill you in is the verse that I think of is when Moses says, but Lord, I can't speak. I'm not eloquent, is what he says. And he says, it's okay because just go and I will speak for you. So we have to know that God will also qualify us. But what I love about this verse is it says, he predestined you. He called you. He justified you. And he will glorify you. God's not going to set you up for failure. God's not going to set you up to go out and pursue the call that he has for your life, and he's not going to give you the strength if you need strength. He's not going to give you the words if you need the words. God sets us up for success. God literally created you to be who you are to fulfill the plan that he has on your life. So if we walk without fear, so if we walk in faith but we don't let fear creep in, then we will be able to fulfill all the plans that he has for our lives. We won't have to ask the questions, what if? And I don't know about you, but a lot of us, we go through situations where it requires faith without fear. And I know like the scariest thing in my whole life, and Christy's pregnant and she can tell you, and if you're a girl, I hope you never have to experience it. That was like the biggest faith journey for me because I was so scared that something was going to happen. Every time, like, it's like you can have a stomach ache and it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta call the doctor. It's like my foot starts hurting and I'm like, is the baby hitting a nerve and then it's gonna cause damage to my foot and then the baby's gonna not make it? Like, I'm telling you, it could have been like whatever going on, and it was like, I literally was thinking to myself, I have never been so fearful in my life. And because of that, it causes you to get down. It causes you to start questioning everything you've ever believed. It starts you to cause questioning, well, will God really provide for me? Will God really keep whatever I need safe? Will God actually bring me to the end? Will God actually fulfill all the plans that he has for my life? And that's what fear does, is when we're going through a situation and we let fear in, we can't live to the fullness that God has for us because we keep asking the what ifs and the hows. And it doesn't matter how, because as long as we say yes to the Lord and we're saying yes without fear, he will provide where we need that provision. And we have to remember that God has set us up to succeed. He wants to share his glory with us. So if he wants to share his glory with us, he's not going to send us out and say, figure it out yourself, losers. God's just not going to do that. He's not like, I have this plan for you, but I'm going to make you look a fool. You know what I'm saying? Like, God has this plan for us, and he wants to glorify us, because how many of you know when we do something, it shouldn't glorify ourselves. When we do something and we get that glory, it's all to glorify him. And we have to know that we can't let fear set in. I'm going to ask the musicians to come forward. In 1 John 4:18, it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. Fear involves torment. There's no place for fear in our lives if we want to live a torment-free life. And I don't know about you, I don't want to live a life filled with torment. I don't want to be questioning every single ache and pain that I have in my body, not believing that God's going to heal me, not believing that God's going to provide for me, not believing that God's going to restore me, not believing that God's going to take my past and use it for good in my future. And we have to truly believe that. The definition of torment is severe physical or mental suffering. When I was pregnant, I swear my mind was making aches and pains up. It's like I let fear in and all of a sudden my body hurt. And this is like legit stuff. Like I would go to the doctor, like, I don't know, maybe like just a muscle's pulling. I'm like, I swear like me letting fear in and stressing about it is actually causing my body to go crazy. Fear involves torment. And the definition of torment is physical or mental suffering. Guys, God does not want us to live with physical or mental suffering. He doesn't want us to wake up and just be like, God, what's going on in my life? He doesn't want us to wake up and be like, crap, I have to live another day. He doesn't want us to wake up and think, crap, what did I do yesterday? God, are you ever going to even forgive me? That's not how he wants us to live. Fear, and this is something, if fear involves torment, and it's literally suffering, right? Physical and mental suffering. Fear is something that we shouldn't even be messing around with. Because again, if you want to live that suffering-free life, we can't open our heart and let that fear in. As I mentioned earlier, fear can literally be crippling. Fear is what holds us back from experiencing everything that God has for us, from experiencing complete restoration, complete redemption, complete forgiveness. Forgiveness. God wants to forgive you, but sometimes we can't even forgive ourselves, that we feel so bad about something that we've done that we don't even want to take it to Jesus and ask for forgiveness because we have a fear that he's not going to forgive us. But he says, I have already forgiven you. Don't hold yourself back. Don't open your heart and let that fear in. God didn't create us to be tormented, but it says perfect love casts out fear. So if we want to live a fearless life, we need to let God in. Our heart needs to be filled with God. We need to be completely filled with his love. God is love. So if we don't want fear, we need love. And if God is love, we need Jesus to be full, completely full in our hearts. So it's time that we stop letting that fear in and we start letting Jesus in a new way. Perfect love casts out fear. I want to live fearlessly. God does some awesome stuff. I know that he has an awesome plan for each and every one of you. I don't know where you're going to end up. You might end up out of your city that you're in. You might be in another country. You might be reaching people you never thought. You might be doing things that you never thought that you would do. But it requires us to be fearless. Because if he's taking us to a place that is uncomfortable, which most of the times when he takes us to a new place, it is uncomfortable because it's the unknown, we get full of fear. But if we want to live fearless, his love casts out all fears. So we have to take those what ifs and kick them to the side. We have to take those hows. How, God? How are you even going to do this? Put it away. And the questions, well, am I qualified? Am I good enough? Am I even worthy of healing? Am I even worthy of letting my past stay in the past and not dictate my future? You are. Because perfect love is living inside of you, and he hasn't called you to live a life of fear. He hasn't caused you to live a life of torment, and he hasn't called you to be set aside. He says, I want to glorify you. Who you are is good enough. Who you are is sufficient enough. So my question for you tonight is, what are you afraid of? We all have something that is holding us back at some point or another. I don't need to list all the different scenarios because you know what's holding you back. So tonight, I want you to answer that question. What am I afraid of? Am I just afraid of fully surrendering my life to him? What is it? So I want you to stand tonight.